discussion? Okay, so now I would like to know if there's any discussion around.
I just want to, just considering this is for the public, I know there was a question last time about, I think it was Councilman Burnett who raised a question about, essentially, I think his question was about whether there's like a slippery slope argument to be made. I think that's maybe the best way to put it. I see that Attorney Callahan is on. I just want to make sure that, first of all, that this is the updated language, if it was updated, and just a little bit about the process and making sure that the language does what we want it to do. Darren, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. False start. Good evening, everyone. I think we could craft this language to do whatever this committee wants it to do. I mean, ultimately, this just provides a greater level of flexibility and efficiency for city staff when it concerns grants, federal and state grants, which we universally accept and apply for when they're available anyway, and avoids delay, lag time, and potentially missing out on grant funding. So it's something that's come up fairly common, not through just the Norwalk Police Department, but through virtually every department in the city of Norwalk. As far as whether they need an authority to apply for the grant in the first instance, or take the initial steps and so forth and so on. This just basically provides a blanket authorization that that we could move forward with federal and state grant agreements as normal course, provided that there's no city appropriation required to support the grant program. However, if there's concerns about the breadth of the authorization, it could certainly be tailored. For example, it could be tailored to grant funds under a certain dollar amount, or conditioned upon or really any I mean, it would be something that would be subject to revocation at any time by the Common Council. So it's not a one-time decision that
Because here's my question. My question is this, and I think this was, and I don't mean to step on in case Diana or others want to chime in, but the vibe that I got, and not just vibe, that's wrong. When Deputy Chief Zecca and the police department made this application, this was originally proposed as a structure to deal with a specific circumstances around certain types of grants, and that the grants had to do with that they had a specific time frame in which the grant was both announced and must be completed, and that it wasn't going to happen within the amount of time that it would take for the council to get it through committee and then get through the full council. So I thought my understanding was that this was for a pretty specific situation. Please someone chime in if that's incorrect, but that was my understanding of why this came up in the first place.
Can I double back to add on to your question, Councilman?
Of course.
Please do.
On adding to what Councilman Goldstein said, with the concerns of the council, this is considered or a question of precedence, and the abilities for the only Norwalk Police Department to do this. If this was something that was equated to all of our councils or our different departments to be able to do, but the precedence of just the police department is one thing that we might want to pay attention to. And exactly what Goldstein said, this was actually allocated for one specific grant that would be running out of time. So the language and what we okay may put a little bit too much, for me, not power, but just too much ability in the police department's hand without counsel to us. So I think the precedence of this question was the biggest part of what Councilman Burnett was bringing up.
Yeah, and to double back on what you just said, Councilmember Revoluz, that was something that was discussed both when Greg Burnett brought it up, and then also Darren and I spoke about this a lot, and Mr. Lim and I also spoke about this a lot. I want to be clear that this is something that could set precedent for other committees. Now, it will have to go through those other committees in order to impact any one of those departments, is my understanding. And Darren, please chime in if I'm getting it wrong.
Sorry, you were cutting up a little bit there, but I think what you asked is will this impact any other departments other than the Norwalk Police Department currently as drafted? And I just need to pull up the latest version that's on the agenda. But
Well,
I
actually was making a statement of something we had talked about already, and I'm sorry I broke up. Please let me know if I do that again. I'd spoken that this is just police department because that's, our purview as a committee. But it could set precedent for other committees and departments moving forward. But that was something that they have to decide upon, not us.
Yeah, it's exactly correct. There's obviously the Common Council works through multiple committees that oversee various departments in the city, and so it would certainly be appropriate for each of those committees to consider their department's requests for what I would call a universal authorization for purposes of accepting federal and state grants. So absolutely.
Well, Dominique, what was your feeling? I don't know if that's if your question is related to this discussion or if it's something else.
Well, it is. Chair, is it all right if
Of course, please go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I know Diana wanted to mention it too, but I kind of want to, what Diana mentioned exactly was as I understood it, the concern from Mr. Burnett and Councilmember Burnett as well. And I also see that as a potential unintended issue. For me, I guess I'm just trying to think if there's a compromise to be made, perhaps it's a subject to annual reapproval of the council or the committee as it, and then the council as like a compromise. But that was something I may be putting us a little further ahead in our conversation. But that, to me, that was the concern I had. Yeah.
I kind of want to, I think Dominique is right in terms of the accountability part of it, but the question that I have, and I just want to, and Deputy Chiesecka, I don't know, I remember, tell me if I am remembering this incorrectly from when we first met on this subject. My understanding was the stated reason that this language was proposed was to deal with a pretty specific situation that happens on an annual basis. Is that correct?
We have multiple grants that have no cost share to the city. So this would only be for grants that don't cost the city anything. It's just about getting the city money. And we're constantly butting up against time constraints where we're having trouble being able to get it through committee, through council, to the mayor, law review, to get them signed in the amount of time we need to be able to apply properly.
And so
it would still go through the legal department and the mayor. The idea is to not, it would not go through council for those to be able to get those signatures to apply and accept the money. But
the primary reason is because time is of the essence.
Correct. Right? Absolutely.
Okay.
The time constraints are forcing work. Constantly. Okay, Darren, this has to right. Or we have to try to skip committee, we're running out of time because timeframes are usually relatively short. We have to get it written and then submit it in a certain time.
And
So it
I
really is
remember from
about
last
timing.
time, from last time we spoke, if I remember correctly, when you said time is relatively short, I remember we talked about how some of these are anywhere between 21 and 45 days. Is that right?
That's a little bit short. We did have one recently that was extremely short. I think it was about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Which
Yeah,
was
so
extremely- but
something,
that's the exception. Most of the time, you're talking 30, 60 days, something like that.
So
But
would-
again, to be able to write and then get them through council is right based on how the meetings fall, et cetera. We're constantly having issues with that.
so would you, because I've noticed this, but you probably could speak equally to it, but it seems to me that either, whether it's state grants or federal grants, the timeframes, the notice to the city as municipalities is getting shorter and shorter, and the requirements are becoming more onerous as far as paperwork, and it's just becoming difficult, if not impossible, to satisfy the requirements at the time. And
Correct.
so what ends up happening, Josh, is they'll prepare the application documents, which will take time in itself. They got to submit it to the grant agency. The grant agency then will tell them, okay, you need to do X through Z, or A through Z of whatever to get their paperwork in. And then they got to go through a public approval process. I've never seen, since I've been here, one state or federal grant not be authorized by the Common Council. Provided there was no local funding match. And then it every contract that the mayor signs gets reviewed by the law department before it gets signed. And some of these grant documents, they just throw the kitchen sink in there. I mean, you got to comb through just pages and pages and reams, well, not reams of paper, but it's 8-point font of 30 pages of this statute and that statute, and so forth and so on. And 99 out of 100 times, there's no issue for the law department to catch. There was one occasion where there was an ICE enforcement issue, and we put the brakes on accepting those grant funds. It had to do with the Edwin Britton JAG grant, and that has since been corrected at the federal level, and so we can now accept those funds again. But that's what's occurring. So I think, and quite correctly, that the police department, other departments are trying to figure out ways to expedite the process, because we're jeopardizing losing funds.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yeah,
Sure.
please.
Yep, thank you. Just as an example of a recent issue we had, there was a recent grant that was awarded by the state for an auto theft task force, joint project between municipalities. And the time frame was very short. Within about a week, all our neighboring cities and towns were able to have the chief sign and agree to accept the money, accept the terms, and have the item move forward. Because of our city ordinance that doesn't allow me to do that, it had to go to the mayor to sign, and he can't sign without the council approving it prior, and the law department approving the MOU. It was very basic, but at one point, Sue and I talked, and we said, we're not going to be able to take any of this money. We're going to have to back out of this. We're not going to get this done because we just can't get all those approvals within 2 weeks or whatever it was. We did get it done. Thankfully, Darren, was able to, move it through. And at the time, I'm not sure if you were in power at that point or was a previous council, but you were kind enough to move it forward very quickly without the committee approvals, and it went to council and it got done. But it was very close to, we would have lost about $25,000. We did not, But those are the kind of things that occur because of things like this. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because as Darren knows, I talk to him and Sue talks to him probably too much about MOUs and things that we need to sign and we can't. But, you know, it gives us a checks and balances. But on some of these routine things, you know, we were able to give it to Darren or whoever in the law department, have them look at it and then move forward, you know, immediately putting these things through where there's no cost share. There's nothing, you know, that doesn't put the city at any risk, really.
Thank you,
You know-
Chief. Can I just move on to Council Member Revelous, because she's been holding her hand up and been very patient, and then we'll circle back.
Thank you so much. Madam Chair, maybe may I ask you, is it possible then, because like I said, like he just said, it hasn't happened yet. And we're also very, very able, like if any need, to be called to meet if need be. We've had many a times where we were called to meet off normal dates and normal times to get deadlines met. Or can it be minimized to at least meeting with our chairs? Maybe not the whole council, but meeting with somebody in our council that then will go ahead and let us know. Because I really think it is a slippery slope to not have that there, especially with, like, you know, our law enforcement. So I'm just wondering, can't we be called to a special meeting if needed? Or can our chairs, whoever's needed, be called in representation of us to expedite whatever's needed?
Those are both really good points. To your first point, we have been called to special meetings in order to expedite some of the things that have not been on the calendar for our, general meetings that are already set. I think everybody is trying to avoid as much as possible because we have so many meetings and they're scheduled and it's hard to fit those in times, but it is very much allowed. And then two, Darren, please correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things we had discussed when we were talking about updating this language from the last meeting was having the grants posted on the website and have communication go out to either myself or the full committee when grants were being applied for. At least have some notification of that.
Yeah, so that's what I meant by, I think there's a ton of flexibility as far as how to get a comfort level with this. So in addition to capping the dollar amount of the authorization, you could condition on other things such as that the particular grant has to be, the application, the grant program that's being applied for has to be posted on, the department's landing page so that the public knows that the city is applying for grant funds. And it could also be a condition that formal notice be sent, electronically to the chair of the appropriate committee. You could do any umpteenth number of things to, make this, more digestible.
Yeah, I think the direct send would be great. Well, better than just posting it on a website. I think the direct send, so it's not easily missed, would be a lot better.
That was concerned about having a website alone as well, because our website is not the best. It's hard to navigate, unfortunately. Darren, is some language that we need to add into this in order to move it forward?
So I'm just looking as it's written on the tonight's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you would add at the end, upon the following conditions, and then you would just
Okay,
list.
and can we do that as an addendum? So we can actually, if we decide to this tonight, can as an addendum?
Yeah, you could modify the language here, or if you want, or you can move it to the Common Council, and we can, put the corrected language in the agenda for the Common Council. I think it's either way is fine. It might be a little bit cumbersome trying to work out the language during the meeting, but I think the concept would be what were the conditions that this committee would want on there. And then I would just manuscript them into the existing authorization as stated in the current agenda.
That's appreciated, Darren. Councilmember Egan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I look at this as two issues. The first is that we have to make the process less cumbersome for our police department. We have to follow the recommendations of Chief Kohalik and Deputy Chief Zecca that, there are times when we have grant money available to us and the process itself will bog us down. So that's one. But I also think that we have to balance that with not doing things behind closed doors for sake of a better term. And so I like what Councilwoman Revolou indicated, that maybe our chair can speak on our behalf if necessary, but until we streamline the process, and I do believe that we should streamline the process, I want to make sure that all the committees are included on this, because I think that we should do it across the board, not just for, be it Public Works or Jim Travers in TMP or our police department or fire department. Maybe we should look at this holistically and do it across the board for all city departments. And that's all I got to say. Thanks.
I apologize for my technical difficulties. I'm going to leave and come back in, but first, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chair McMurray. Just to pick up, Councilmember Keegan, were you suggesting, I just want to be clear that we should hold off on doing this in our committee for the police department right now and wait till we do it for all, or you think we should do it now and with the intention of doing it across all the committees?
Well, thank you. Through the chair, I do think that we should listen to what Chief Kohalik and Deputy Chief Zecca say. And if they recommend that we do this now, I have no problem with that. I can't see us, voting this down. This is just simply streamlining the process. But in fairness to the public, Chief did indicate last meeting that he would make every effort to make sure that the public was aware of the grant money and that we would be alerted that this grant money was going to be applied for. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm more than comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember Keegan. Other than obviously our own police department, you are our resident expert on law enforcement on council, so thank you. I just need to, I do agree with Councilwoman Revolou about that piece as well. And I think that I would be very happy even if we could maybe not set this in stone perhaps, but make it amenable to revision every X year or years, just to always check temperature. But as a suggestion, the other piece I was thinking too was, the public access to the documents. And I don't honestly know how often or how accessible our council PDFs are on our city website. But I think that making sure that at least it's maybe like we do with finance reports out of the finance committee, maybe that's just something we could add to the council packets once the grant application is completed, as an idea. Like that's another way that we could have public visibility on these, so that, because typically, right, don't we, Deputy Chief Zecca, we see the applications as a part of our packets here, right? Because then we have to authorize it.
Yes, you usually do see parts of them, or
Yeah.
sometimes the whole thing, sometimes depends on exactly what it is.
Okay,
But
cool.
so you may not get like a DUI or distracted driving grants. You might not get the every day, right? So all the days and things are all listed out in there of the enforcement. You may not get that whole thing in the entirety in the packet, but you'd get the general of what the grant is and what we're doing.
Right. That's right. Because then I think that's helpful for the public, and only for the ones that would obviously that would pertain to this particular provision, but that would be, I think, more helpful too, because then we could say, hey, it's in the packet. We would have access so we could share it if people had questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson, as a, we add in, Darren and I, that any can be revoked at any time. But to your point, Darren, would we be able to put something in, do we need to put something in there about amending it or changing it if for some reason it's not going the way we had hoped it would, to Member Johnson's point?
So, so the way I approach this, I wanted to provide the ultimate flexibility for the council and the committee. So that's what the revocation allows for. Revocation anytime. Next week. I mean, the only trepidation I have about, putting it for a specific period is then that has to be monitored, and someone's going to forget. So it's just a tracking
We
issue.
won't.
So it could be done either way. But it does present, tracking.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds of this. On the one hand, I am anti leaving money on the table, and because this is that doesn't require a municipal funding match, I think that this is something where we should make the process more efficient. And I think that the chief and the deputy chief have clearly made the case and made the point that, like, we are our own worst enemy if we create a process in which it denies us opportunities like this. So that's the one thing. The other thing, is, and I think that what Diana and Greg Burnett were talking about in terms of precedents is about, the flexibility by which we are sort of delegating our oversight prerogatives. And the thing about, and I realize that someone's got to watch the time thing, but I don't see, considering the whole purpose of this is to deal with when there is a compressed time period. Like, that's the whole reason we're talking about this. So I am struggling with, if we do not put a temporal constraint on this, that we are going to be producing an outcome, not even an outcome, producing language that doesn't adhere to the stated purpose of the request. I don't know if that's me being a little too in the weeds. Frankly, I think that what Tom Keegan said is right about, overall, especially for this kind of thing, which doesn't require a municipal funding match. We want to make this as accessible as possible. But I do think that the time issue is pretty significant here.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Attorney Callahan, I might be looking at an older version in my packet online, but the language can be revoked at any time was added. Am I correct in assuming that?
It's in the agenda that was posted online.
Oh, okay. I'll check. Okay, very good. Thank you. And so, what does that revocation look like? Like, what would that in practice look like then? I would just say, like,
it would be very simple. It would be the council hereby revokes the authorization granted concerning grants on the February 24th 2022 calendar as item 7 subparagraph A3. That's it. You just revoke a previous authorization.
oh, and so it would just then default back to what's in the ordinance that Chief Kohalik described.
We'd go back to following the process, which is the whole reason why we go through a approval process is because the charter says that the power to authorize the due execution of all contracts sits with the Common Council, and the authority to execute contracts on behalf of the city rests with the mayor. So a grant ultimately requires a grant agreement. It's a contract. And so in order to comply with the charter, we go through this process. In practice, what ends up happening is there's relatively little to no discussion on the grants because we're getting money. Sometimes there's discussion because there's a lot of positive benefits. But
We've
really,
also had discussions, to be fair, just to interject, of some issues that may be unforeseen. So, I mean, at least I've been a part of those conversations. It's not, there's a critical eye from what I recall. So that's, yeah, that's, I think, my only concern is, are we losing anything by doing this? But I appreciate your feedback on that. I mean, it does sound like a pretty straightforward process if we ever would need to do that. So I appreciate that answer.
Councilmember Revelous.
Did you call me?
Yes,
Oh, okay, it kind of cut.
sorry.
So this
I'm
is
having
it's
major
okay.
technical difficulties tonight.
It's okay. It's okay. So this is not, I'm not calling this out as a motion, right? This is a question. I don't want, because I know once I say it, it's going to sound like a motion. I'm just questioning it. It's not a motion. I just want to say that. Should we table this till we get this language right and comfortable with it? You know what I mean? Because we're obviously all, not to say that you don't need it, but the precedence, the question, what even Councilperson Johnson and Councilman Goldstein just said came right back to our original question from Councilman Greg Burnett. So if there's a possibility, this is a question again, I'm not throwing it out as a motion. If you guys say maybe we should, then I'll throw it as a motion. But should we table this for this language on this to be a little more clear, or add what we're saying right now before we proceed anywhere? Because I can see we're fumbling with the verbiage. So I'm just wondering. Question, not a motion, just question.
I gotta, and with all due respect, Councilmember Revelous, I actually disagree with that. I think some of the questions that are coming up actually aren't what Councilmember Burnett's point was. His point, I thought, was about how authorizations like this cut across multiple departments.
Which is what Johnson said, which is Johnson's question before you was about that. That's what I mean.
I agree, but I also think that, but I personally think that if we are going to set some conditions, we might as well do them here, take it before the council. And if there needs to be some revisions that the full council wants to weigh in on, that's fine. But I especially for this kind of thing, I do think that the longer we take to set this, I'm worried that we risk missing further opportunities. And this, I do wonder if, I guess, and I don't know if this is the case now, are there any of these grants that are pending? Like that this authorization will be encompassed in sort of this top authorization that we need to deal with now, or is this like a future planning thing?
Right. And I'm with you on that, not to continue, I'm with you on that. It's just wondering, because if we do, and then the verbiage is not accepted with our full, would it get tabled there? That's my question as well.
It's not even verbiage.
It's just a question.
It's not even verbiage as much as the question is whether we want to set certain conditions on the language that's here, because the language that's here is actually fine. It's there on here after.
But the conditions aren't. The conditions aren't.
They're not.
So it would have to be added as verbiage. Right.
Right.
So
I'm not super concerned between Darren and us what the eventual language is. It's just the binary decision of whether we want to add conditions at all and what they are.
Yeah. Kind of with you, but I still think that would have to be written.
Yeah, I think we're gonna do. So I think we're gonna do that here. But
that's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you.
I hear both sides of this for sure. I did send out the language ahead of time in case anybody had any questions. And I know now we've had more
Mhm.
discussion about it, and time to think. We have tabled this once.
Mhm.
I feel that I understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Revoluce. I just would hate to table it again. I think that we do need to add some different language to it to make us feel comfortable and move it on to the council, but I feel confident that we can get there. I think we've made a lot of strides already from the last time
Yeah.
we discussed this.
Okay, that's why I don't want to just, that's why it's a question. I didn't want to do it because I don't want to
Sure.
hold
No,
it
I
up. You know what I
appreciate it.
mean? I just,
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a good question. And I think we, definitely for bringing it up.
thank you for answering, guys.
Does anybody have any other comment, discussion points on this before we move on to a vote?
I think that the only thing, because I'm looking at, and again, because I realized like 15 minutes ago that the language in the packet is different from the language that I think was posted on the city's website. And the language that I'm looking at, Jen, from the email that you sent a couple of weeks ago, has the conditions of does not require a local municipal match, doesn't exceed $100,000, and notice of the city's intent to accept is posted on the city's websites. Those are the listed conditions right now, right?
Yes, and
So-
you're right that it does not say under $100,000 in the language that we have in front of us in the packet.
Right. Again, it's not playing game. I just want to make sure that I was looking at the right thing. I don't know if people are with me on this or not. I do wonder if we need to at least say somewhere, even if we don't set specific parameters on time, but that, that this is the intent of this is not for any grant. It's for, specific grants, but I don't know.
Well, Darren and I
think
talked.
I'm standing on my own island on this one.
Well, you're not, but Darren and I spoke about a lot before I even sent documentation to you all. And one of the things that he made a good point to me about was that we need to make the language very clear, and it needs to be easy to follow for whoever is going after these grants. And when we start to add stipulation after stipulation, yes, I understand it protects us, but it also makes it a little bit more convoluted for the people who are going after the grant money.
Yeah, we really need clear direction on when we have authority to move forward, absent further public approval by the council and committee or not. So clarity is paramount. I'd actually prefer, I hate to say it, but not, not to have to just follow the normal process than to have a lack of clarity and when we can, act and can't act. I still think you certainly could put in conditions, but it's really how you do it. It's very hard to know what it would mean exactly about insufficient time. What that would constitute from my perspective. There insufficient of time to go through and seek a common council approval in light of the time constraints of the particular grant. But certainly a bright line condition, for example, like under a certain dollar threshold, or you have to post on a website, or you have to let the chairman of the committee know. Those are bright line rules that are just easy to comply with.
And I think those, given our discussion tonight, could be added and should be added. Everybody agree on that?
Yeah, definitely the dollar amount, and to aware at least the chair at the very least, I don't
And
know how many
I can
grants a year
yeah.
this is done, but at least they should aware you.
I can only speak for myself. I don't know how long I'll be sitting in this chair past this year, but I would definitely let the committee know as well as I knew. So, I think if everybody's okay with it, we're going to go ahead and move forward with a vote as long as there's no further discussion on this topic, knowing that we can add in that language. Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Revelous, are you okay? You want to ask?
No,
add
I
to-
was just gonna say, like, yes, if we add it, but just please make sure it's exactly the same in what we're receiving and what's on the website, because we obviously don't have a
Absolutely.
discrepancy, so.
Absolutely. And what we'll do is I'll work with Darren to make sure that this language is in there, and I'll send it on to all of you one before it goes to our next council meeting. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and call for a vote. Please, all in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. All of those opposed, please raise your hand. Any abstentions? Ms. abstains. It passes.
No, I was against. That was for me.
Oh, I'm
being
sorry.
against.
I'm sorry. Miss Ayers is against. Everybody else is in favor, so it passes. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to move on to the next item, which again, we are not taking action on this evening. Bye, Darren. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
We're going to be talking about with our special guest, Stuart Wells, our registrar of voters, about voting precincts and dividing lines between as described and on the state federal voting district map. So Stuart, I will let you start the discussion.
Okay, if I might suggest that you put yourselves on speaker view, because I'm going to be swinging the camera around to focus on the maps a little bit when I talk, just to make it a little clearer what I'm trying to say. Every 10 years, they have a census and they redistrict the state voting districts for the legislature, also for the Senate and for the Congress. But fortunately, we don't have to worry about them. At least lately, we've all of Norwalk's in one Senate district and one congressional district. But they move our legislative district lines around a lot. Get that here. The old map. And just to give you a very quick rundown of the changes that they made, and I mean quick, what happened basically is Fairfield County gained population. We got a new House district. They plunked it down on Wilton. And that left us with shoving all the other districts around to fit a new district in Wilton. We picked up more of District 143. For those of you that can't put the numbers and the people and the things together, 143 is a district now represented by Stephanie Thomas, was on the east side. If you can see my pointer here in your camera, it's this district previously, and they picked up almost all of this part of 142, which is Lucy Dathan's district at the moment. Well, if we lost all of that in the 142, they needed more territory, so they got it down here in near Rowayton and the Brookside area. And indeed, Rowayton was squeezed down in the 141st. That's Terry Woods district is much smaller in the new map. There were very few changes to the 140th. That's Travis Sims district. And the 137th got much smaller, although it's wholly within Norwalk, meaning it must have gained population. And I'll look at the new map, if you see that. And you can see what I'm talking about. I think, let me see here. All right. This is the new 143rd, which now includes the east side that it used to have, plus this extra area up in the West Rock School area, basically. The 142nd that moved, spread down in this direction, and so that so there's a lot of moving of street designations as to what district they're in, even after you set the lines. Again, very few changes in the 140th, a couple of tiny little pieces that were lopped off having to do with changes in population. So So we're proposing that we now, because the 143rd is so much bigger, we're gonna need 3 voting precincts instead of 2. The others all had 3, except of course the 141st, which only ever had 1. It's never been very large. We share that district with Darien. So that would make 13 instead of 12. We have 13 now for the municipal elections, so we have the equipment for it. And indeed, we anticipated a certain amount of this and got our hands on extra tabulators and extra transportation cabinet in the past couple of years, expecting something like this to be needed. So those were the changes in the district, but there were many additions to the 143rd. Remember, it was right along the east side. Well, it also picked up this area around City Hall and north of Stu Leonard's there, as well as all the stuff up around West Rocks. The 137th lost this piece and these pieces, and so it's changed size as well. It was good here. The loss to the 137th makes Marvin much more manageable. It gotten too large for federal elections. So anyway, we're proposing then that these new areas be divided as shown. The 143rd, the area around Nathan Hale can be the polling place, and Westport Avenue would be a good dividing line there. Wolf Pit for the 143B, and the dividing line of East Avenue and Newtown Avenue works very nicely in terms of sizes of these territories, with West Rocks now being for 143C. Unfortunately, in 142B, the Ponus area gained this area that was left over from West Rocks. So using the same line as before makes it too big. And so the Fox Run area needs this area of in Spring Hill to balance off the size that it lost, because this is going to be a new polling place in Brookside, because the Brookside portion is now much bigger. So those are the ways to balance the size. The 140th, the lines that were there before worked perfectly well. And in the 137th, the dividing line of the turnpike here between 137A and B works. And there's a line along here, which is basically the Norwalk River. Works quite well between the Tracy and St. Mary's areas. I think the information you got shows that the polling places are now pretty well sized, between 3,000 and 5,000 or 5,500 voters approximately, which works well for us in terms of administration. And then they're not too large for the city parking lots, the school parking lots, which could also be a problem in these kind of elections. The population data you see there. And I've spelled out the lines. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. They do this every year. Some of these areas were lost this time or gained last time, and vice versa. It's kind of an interesting process to do this in the system, because as you can see on this map, there's a great number of little areas that had to be moved or their districts changed in the voter system. If we have to change from 142C to 143C, that still means that every street in that area, and we have to identify them all, has to be changed in the computer system, both at the state level and then in our local computer system. One more thing you should know about. This is an example of the map level we have to work with. These are assessors maps here. They're 11 by 17. We have them digitally. They're the same ones the assessor has in their office. They show the streets and the parcels, and particularly the house numbers, since we need that that's one of the things that gets changed, is to assign each of these houses to a voting district. And to follow the lines, you have to have a map of this much detail. This is the line on between 142 B and C. Over here is Super 7. And it follows down and maps along these odd roads. It's very hard to see in any smaller level of detail. So we run off a lot of those and try to draw the line. It all goes according to lines from the census tracts. There's a map back here that shows some of them, although I have little post-its on them, where I was estimating the population, because we had to do that to guess how many voters we'd have in each of the districts as we figured out the right way to do this. So I don't have any specific stuff more than that for you. What you have laid out for you is the
Stuart, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for all of your work on this, because it does not look like a fun job. It looks very detailed, and it sounds like you've really thought of thought.
It is very detailed indeed. Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. Does anybody have questions for Stuart? I want to go over anything?
I just want to, first of all, I mean, Stuart, this is an immense amount of work, and it is tough and important. And I also think, and I know this is in some of our written materials, about trying to keep as many voters as possible voting at the same polling places, both in municipal and state and federal elections, which I think is honestly a crucial thing, because you know, even though it's not that far away from place to place in a given district, like, why make it harder for people?
If you could get rid of the taxing district lines, they could do even better.
True. My only question is, how many, and forgive me if I missed this, how many people would be, approximately, how many people would be moving into this third precinct in 143? Like, what would it shake out in terms of, like, how many voters would be actually going to this, or eligible to be going to this place?
Well, they already live there. I don't know. I'm not sure about your question, but 143C would have 5,000 voters, but they mostly vote at West Rocks now, because
Right.
that's a lot of D2. As far as that goes, the overall numbers are reducing from 3/8 of the, 3/8 of the town, 37.5%. Had to move between years to voted in different places. In odd and even years, it's down to 25% on this. But because we're constrained by taxing district lines, we can't really change the municipal precincts. And to do anything better at the federal level, we'd have to have much smaller polling places and a lot more of them, which would be vastly difficult and expensive to administer. Never mind that we don't have the equipment or storage space.
Right.
So we're kind of happy to be able to stay in the 12, 13, 14, 15 polling places. We have the equipment and facilities to handle that. But other cities not much bigger than us and with no more turnout than we get in raw numbers, in the 20s, which, as you can imagine, is a lot more expensive to administer. We can control the time for voting and the lack, and prevent long lines by increasing or changing the number of checker lines in each polling place. We have multiple ones each of these, and we can change more of them in a presidential year and so forth to cut the line down.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have questions, and I appreciate Councilmember Goldstein's question. It's great additional info. Just want to say thank you because of the Herculean, is that the appropriate? I don't know, just how huge this task is. And to keep, it feels like it seems like you really focused on making sure like access and the ballot was equitable and foremost in your considerations. So thank you so much.
As to the effort, you have no idea, but there are all these little bizarre aspects of our system. For instance, on Spring Hill, one of the dividing line between two districts is the Hill Street. If you know where that is, going up on that. Well, unfortunately, the house on one side of the street is number 37, and on the other side is number 37 and a half. And you can't even put that in the state system. They require the number and the half to be in the same district. So we have to make up a phony street name for that. There are every little odd kind of thing you can imagine. And of course, we have odd and even numbers on the wrong sides of streets, some intentionally, some not. And halves all over the place, and out of order numbers. So keeping track of all that has been nothing but fun. But fortunately, I'm getting so old that 10 years from now, somebody else will have to do it. They have my sympathy in advance.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to replace you. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Stuart? I just want to wrap up this point of conversation by saying, Stuart Wells, I think you are a Norwalk treasure. Thank you for all that you do and your team does. I appreciate you. And thank you for being here tonight. So
you're very generous, and thank you.
I appreciate everything you do, and thank you for being here tonight. We will move the action item for this along as soon as we possibly can in this committee, so we can get everything going for you and your team.
If you
So
could
thank
indulge
you.
me for 1 second, you just were talking about grants. It's a good thing I didn't know you had all these rules, because right before the presidential election, we found out with about a week to go that there was a grant available. We didn't know how much it was for, but we applied for it and kind of squeaked in, and we didn't have anybody to notify. So, well, we did get a grant of $50,000, which was not too bad. I mention it only because that's the first grant we've ever seen available for elections. You have to, not every department is the police department where they get them fairly frequently. So I suppose
We love getting grant money due. So thank you. You have a good night, Stuart. We'll talk to you again soon, okay? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, Stuart. Thank you.
Have a good one, Stuart. So the last item on our
Bye,
agenda
thank you.
this evening is I've invited Mr. Jim Travers to speak with us about public safety and traffic patterns and just plans and studies that he and his team have coming up. So thanks for being here, Mr. Travers.
Hi, thank you. And joining me is Mike Yosak, who is our principal engineer, who's actually undertaking the city's transportation master plan, which is what we wanted to chat with you a little bit about today. So
welcome to
thank
Mr.
you.
Yosak too. Thank you. Take it away.
So, first, thanks for taking up the issue of grants. I have to say that, from a department that does a fair amount of them, and having experience in 2 other municipalities, it's somewhat cumbersome here. And I think any way to streamline a process is always good, because those windows for grants are coming shorter and shorter. And I certainly would hate that we miss out on stuff, but wanted to chat transportation today, right? So the city is undertaking a transportation master plan, and Mike's leading this efforts. We engaged the firm FHI Studio to assist with putting the master plan together. We do the master plan about once every 10 years. So that master plan ends up being, what we use as our guiding document to guide the, some of the work for the next 10 years. It's also, as we apply for grants as well, these types of documents that we put together are critical for us to be able to secure those grants, so that right from the get-go, we know that we underwent a public process, so that it looks like we how we take a holistic look at the city, So we wanted to chat with you a little bit today because this is a really unique opportunity, and we really wanted to increase the public participation, right? So we have, and Mike will be able to forward everyone in the committee a flyer. I don't know if anybody, we have communicated with some of the representatives, council members in the past, and sent emails asking you to solicit assistance from your constituents, get the word out. So we just wanted to get out with, again, I can tell you that we're doing fairly well with our public participation, right? And it's really guiding the process of what we're going to look like. We're hearing a lot of things that we hear, but we also saw, me seeing, being relatively new to the city. And that is some lack of sidewalks, and how sidewalks really become the integral part of transportation and getting people from point A to point B. And very often some of our most vulnerable users you really rely on these sidewalks and safety issues. So we're hearing a lot from constituents who want more sidewalks. We're looking at our walk score in Norwalk, and it's low. It's one of the lower ones in Fairfield County. So we're going to use this as identifying where those opportunities are, and where we can do better, and what are those missing grant gaps that we have in there. But we're also looking at it in a way of where we're analyzing the data. So we're analyzing the crash data. We're looking at our top crash corridors. We're looking at the type of crashes that are coming through these corridors, and how we can potentially mitigate those through better design. And in some of those, it may be where we look at redesigning an intersection. Sometimes it's how we realign an intersection, what we do with paint. But Mike, do you want to chat a little bit about that and talk about how we're the engagement process, and then we wanted to really open it up to you guys and let you guys ask questions and go from there. Mike might be having microphone issues. No pun intended.
That's kind of funny.
All right, so I'm assuming Mike's had to have microphone issues. Okay. If you get the microphone work, Mike, you can chime in. I'll take it from here. So one of the things that we're looking at, so there's a survey that we're asking people to go to list what are some of your challenges in the transportation network, whether those challenges are walking, whether those challenges are biking, whether they're driving, whether they're getting from point A from point B, whether they're taking public transportation, whether it's a city bus, whether it's the train, how are we getting there? So it's really looking for, what's your experience in the network, so we can start to define this. And then this plan will really be a public document. We'll present it to the board when it's done. It'll be presented to the planning committee as our guiding document. But this will truly be open and available for us. I firmly believe in a participatory process. I firmly believe in transparency. We're really looking at trying to engage multiple firms. So we met last week with Lamond, and he had a meeting with us with all of the heads of the local nonprofits. So really looking at how we can engage our local nonprofit community into this. We've also had many conversations with the Norwalk Transit District. They have been absolutely fabulous about helping get the word out in multiple languages, really having people ride the bus, getting an iPad and working with people where they are, meeting people where they are, and trying to get this. We're trying to do this with as many partners as we can, because for those of you who have been to our office, and those of you who haven't, I would love to set up some time with you guys to chat about issues in your neighborhood as well. But we're a very kind of small department, right? So we're trying to get as much done with limited staff, and really looking at our partners that how we get there. But so we work on many issues from roadway realignments. We look at the pavement markings that are on the road, the traffic signals, creating bike lanes, sidewalks. Mike is working right now at further advancing the Norwalk River Valley Trail. So we're working on another section. We continue to write grants for that to further expand the NRVT. I think Mike has been working solely on the NRVT for most of his time, since it began. If you've walked on it, you need to thank him for his efforts, because that's largely where he's been making the hugest impact, I think, to us in seeing these off-road connections. But we're looking at how we could just improve mobility. We do all the city's traffic signals. We are also responsible for we have oversight to the parking authority. So we have all the on-street parking, we have the street signs, so anything and everything traffic. But let me just give the mics over to you, and you could ask us any questions.
I just want to say, Jim Travers was the first city employees I met in this seat. And I had such a wonderful meeting with him, and I learned so much that I didn't even know existed. So because he offered it, I'm going to suggest that each and every one of you set up a time to go meet with him and his team, because it is valuable information. And I want to commend him and his team, because I think he does, and they do such a good job, really what he said, meeting the people where they are and getting public feedback. One example, if you don't mind sharing this, Jim, is that he said something that was going on in District C here, which is obviously my neighborhood. He said they actually were going door knocking, trying people's feedback on a proposal that they were making. And I just thought, what commitment that is. So does anybody else have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Ms. John. I'm sorry, I don't know who was first.
Ms. Johnson was
Councilwoman
first. Ms.
Okay,
Johnson.
we'll go with
ahead.
Councilmember Johnson first.
All right. Oh, thank you, Councilwoman Revelous. I think we were tied. Appreciate that.
It's okay.
Good. All right. Thank you. So I want to echo what Chair McMurray is saying about all this work. And I know that since you've arrived in Norwalk, we see you. And I know that from speaking with you in conversations, we see this great work and your commitment to equity, particularly accessibility in transportation. And so I've been putting out, on social media, the transportation survey and talking that up, but I know in going around and talking to folks, especially this past fall, the first thing, and this, that people say is, the speeding, like the pedestrian safety, that's a huge issue. So I'm so happy that we're addressing it. And I know, literally people will give me intersections. And so I know that you're also on top of that. But for people, it's like a generic question, but for people who are seeing a lot of speeding in their neighborhood, I know this is the cross-pollination here with our police department. Should they put a ticket on customer service? Should they tell us about it? Like, what do you think is the best option, knowing that a lot of this is going to be surfaced from the work you're doing now?
So I really think that people need to put a ticket into customer service, right? We work very closely with the police department to look at what opportunities we could have for enforcement, right? But we really measure the calls that are coming in through customer service as being defining measures of saying, even addressing to some things in a budgetary process, right? Really justifying, we need more help, right? We need things here. Right. And it also allows us to address the items that come in a priority order. So like, kind of first in, first out type thing. But really important that people have a mechanism. It also this customer service system also allows us to then communicate. So if we didn't get enough information, or maybe the intersection was wrong, we can go back to them, right? And so versus just the verbal communication, really having an opportunity to go back and forth with people, start to lend us the ability to fix those, look, I think what we really did see is in the with the beginning of the pandemic, and it's not something new to Norwalk, it's something that in the transportation world, we're seeing this, nationwide. Speeding has increased, tenfold. It is in every single community, all over. We have, that we had less people on the road for a long time, and those we know that, we design a road for a certain reason, and then when they were the only person, they sped and they're not going back, right? So it'll take a little while to find that new normal and to get at things, but we could always look at what we are there. But we really want to know, not only the speeding, but what are any of the other issues that are around there? Like, and we actually have met a couple of people in community groups and outside, none really in the winter, but we've had some outside in the fall and over the last summer. And we are breaking ground in our first public meeting that we'll have on Wall Street very soon, as we really work with the community to reimagine what Wall Street is going to be. And I think what we're really going to come out of there is going to be something pretty wonderful. Customer service all the way.
Oh, thank you. That's great. And I think from what I hear, just a quick follow up, like the work you're also doing, from what I understand, is going to be related to like promoting further the Vision Zero initiative that I know we've been trying to work on for a while in the city. Is that
so?
Can I ask you to comment on that, or?
Yeah, I'd love to, right? Because, I have had conversations with the mayor about Vision Zero, right? And one of the, when we talk about putting a cart before the horse, we were a little bit before then. So typically when a community looks to adopt a Vision Zero principle, they also, prior to that, we have worked with adopting complete streets legislation and a complete streets design manual. So we understand what we want to build, and then we can build that safe network, right? So we are going out, so we're using some of the ARPA funding to help us engage a consultant to work with the community, both internally, both our, all our elected officials, as well as city staff, and as well as the general public to educate on what complete streets is, right? Really work with us to adopt complete streets legislation, and then finalize that with the complete streets design manual, so that we all are on the same playing field, right? And then from that, we can then start to adopt a Vision Zero policy.
So we would need a complete streets ordinance as a part of that at some point, you think, or no?
Yeah, so we will be presenting a complete streets ordinance to you as part of the process.
All right. That's fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councilperson Johnson, thank you for helping spread the word about the Transportation Master Plan. Very much appreciate it.
Happy to. Yeah.
Councilmember Revolut.
So sorry, I had to find my mic. Crazy. So I appreciate all your work you guys are doing. I really do. Especially in particular in District B. I remember being talked about with our traffic lights, not only here, but in Norwalk, hasn't been touched or looked at since like, I don't know, like the 19 somethings, right? So it's like, so my question more so is, how often are you actually in the District B, because we're more rental, there's more rental residents. So they're in the, and also really how are we structuring our lights? There is a light in particularly that's on a, I can't remember the hill. I know it's going towards Taylor Ave. But that light just stays forever, like it's red forever. So just wondering, when are timing worked on? And then how do you guys work with streets like a Woodward Ave, for example, that's technically a state street, but people are like zooming and their lights, like just wondering, how do you manifest, especially with some of our streets that are state streets, because we really don't have any like, say so in that.
Okay, so a couple of things. So let me do traffic signals first, right? Yes. Yeah, and I think Mike and Fred, before I ramble, have done a really great job of helping to try to begin a process of modernizing the city's traffic signals. And we work with developers when they come in and looking at the impact that they're going to have, and looking at opportunities that we could potentially get. New traffic signals are really expensive, right? So how we could do that. But we also work with grants. So last week, I think it was, or a week before last, but I think it was last week, we announced that we were awarded a $3.4 million grant. And that is to increase 2 additional traffic signals. So that we're currently right now in construction for some traffic signal modernizations, our new traffic signals. We're about to, and then we'll have a phase 4 for us, which gets us 6 more signals. In what we're calling phase 5, the award that we were just given at $3.4 million, we're doing 2 new traffic signals in that one. But what we're really doing is we, when the mall came in, we were really able to capitalize on early adopting some of the newest technology that's out there for signalization, and that's adaptive signals. So under the old model, and Council Bush and Revelous, where you're talking about that traffic signal that you can get back to me at later date, when you're, we did timing, right? And it was just, and we did point of day timing based on where it is, but it always ran through that same cycle, whether it was there. The newer technology really allows us to adapt to the changes in technology. So you can shorten, you get green time, you get elongated green time, shorten a red time, all really based on movement of traffic. So it starts to move it forward. We're really leading the state in the adaptive signal technology. So we entered into it with some, and we saw some good benefits from it. So we're going to be increasing that with about 55 more signals that we have there, as well as also working with the transit district to implement technology that will allow for their buses to take priority, so that we can move the more amount of people and really prioritize public transportation, right? So though that will start to advance over the next couple, probably next couple of years, that allows us to design and get it out. Until that time, we will still work on our old method for those old signals and work on the timing. So you can always let me know which ones of those don't work, and we'll make that happen, or we'll try to make it better at least, right? And then state roads, right? So I've been doing transportation for a really long time. I have a fairly good relationship with the folks up in the department. And even though it's a state road, right? It's our road, right? It's a road that our guys, that our citizens are driving on, and our citizens are impacted when it's a challenge, right? So if it's speeding, we really look at them of how we could sometimes partner with them for maybe a speed control sign. We also look at the police department, and how they can do enforcement. But for you guys to know enforcement, it costs us more money to do enforcement than we actually get from any tickets, because most of the money from the tickets goes to the state. That's why it's really critical to get grants for the police department to do this. It's really the only way that makes it happen, right? But we really look at them. We look at the engagement of the road, and like what's the condition of the road. We report to them on a regular basis, and in times where we can, we partner for those fixes. So regardless of whether it's a city road or state road, sometimes we're really limited on what we can do with a state road. Honestly, you guys know, but it doesn't negate the fact that we don't try, and we see what we see what we can do.
Thank you so much for that. And I really didn't actually know that part about with the grants for the police and you. So I'm kind of glad we moved that a little bit. But thank you. I appreciate the answer. And I really thank you for the work you guys are doing.
No, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, the only thing that first of all, huge debt of gratitude, for the enormous amount of work that you guys do with a pretty limited staff. I want to circle back a little bit to the walkability part. Norwalk is a place with so many different neighborhoods and so many different experiences. I live in District B with Diana. Tom is a District D. Tom and Dominique live in District D, where it's just a totally different landscape. Obviously, there are parts of Norwalk that lend itself more to being more walkable, but where do you see sort of the future of walkability in Norwalk, sort of from the 30,000 foot perspective? Like, what are and especially for those of us who really do care about walkability as a vehicle to produce greater climate change like results in Norwalk? What is next? Where do you see this going? What are things that we can do and to help move the ball forward?
So I can tell you that you don't have a better advocate of walkability than the team that you have in place right now, right? You know, and
Great to
I
hear.
firmly- What?
Just great to hear and great question, because I'm a big walker around here. Even with a car, I'm a big walker. So great question, great to hear.
Well, yeah, so you know, I think that, you know, walkability is important for a number of things, right? It is important for our most vulnerable population, right? And we have to have a safe road to do it. But we really see that, you know, it is we all want to age at home, right? It's the number one thing that we're gonna do. The number one thing that we could do to age at home is to be active, and the number one way to be for an elderly person to be active is to walk. But you know, the thing that amazed me in coming to Norwalk, right, is the fields behind behind City Hall, right? Every day there are people walking in a circle in this field, right? And I just was struck by this. I'm like, well, I go out there, you know, we leave a number of times throughout the day to do field work. There's always people walking, right? The morning, the night. And I'm like, you know, so you know, Garrett, who apologized for not being able to join tonight, right? You know, one day we were like, why are all these people walking here? What's going on? So we went up, we started to approach them. We started to talk to people, you know, like, why do they walk here? And then after, like, why do you ask me why I walk here? You know, what we really started to find out in having conversations with them is that they're going there, they're getting in a car and they're driving to City Hall so they can walk around in a circle because they don't have sidewalks around their house to do there. So they're becoming the traffic that we complain about, right? Simply because they just want to get out and do a little exercise, right? And I thought, how sad for us that this is how we do, right? So, you know, we have been very committed to increasing walkability. You know, we've changed our design for traffic signals and how we have now legs. Every leg of an intersection will have an opportunity to cross. You know, but you know, we started to run into a challenge of how, you know, we were going to community meetings after community meetings and people are talking about sidewalks, right? But then we really started to be challenged about how are we going to begin to make this investment in a fair and equitable manner, right? And so the only way to do it is to understand where we are today. So we have engaged a firm, VHB, who's doing a sidewalk inventory for us. So we've worked with the redevelopment agency to define a grant that allows us to take this inventory. So we will have by the end of March a complete inventory of every sidewalk and the condition of the sidewalk, what material the sidewalk is made, what the curb is, if there's an ADA accessible ramp there, right? All of that will be available to us. And then that starts to set the stage about how we could, you know, better start aligning, you know, getting the missing gaps that are there. And you will see in our budget request that we put in for 2022, a pretty significant increase, right, of what we're looking for sidewalks, because it's just going to take us a while to get there, right? And you know, we're not going to get there solely by us. So we're really looking at you know, we've had a conversation with Congressman Himes about federal support to get the, you know, additional money for sidewalks. We're looking at our ARPA funds, how we can use those to start doing some sidewalks. But you know, looking at sidewalks, regardless of what district you live in, I can tell you, we hear from every district across the city that everybody wants to be able to walk, right? And with more people working from home, you need to get out for a little bit, right? And there's often times that we will hear about speeding on a road, and we'll start to look at that. Right. And this was no different than I had in Stamford as well. When we started to really analyze and put speed counters out there, what we found is we didn't have the speeding that people were concerned about. What you had is a narrow road that you're trying to share with a vehicle. So it doesn't make a difference if the vehicle is going 25 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour, right? When you're trying to share a narrow road with that, it's really scary, right? And those roads that had no sidewalks, we really heard more about that. So we want to make sure that we start to look at, you know, getting these, you know, we really want to look at how we can get, you know, roads around schools, because we only bus our kids, you know, over a mile, right? So we got to get our kids to school safe. And how better would it be to walk your kid to school than getting in a car so you could walk a few, and that's what we hear about parents. Like, I live blocks away from my school, but yet I have to get in a car to go drive my kid to school, right? So we're going to be looking at that. This summer, we're going to do about a mile worth of sidewalks on Highland, really connecting 3 schools there. So I think a really great investment for us. But I think the biggest part is the sidewalk inventory is just going to lead us to down different paths, and also give us opportunities to look for funding once we see those. But we have, in order for I'm a big believer in what's not measured isn't managed, right? So if we don't find out where our inventory of sidewalks are, then we're not going to have a really good job understanding how we get better over time. So Councilperson Goldstein, I hope that answered your question.
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Councilmember Revelou.
So sorry, I have something to jump onto. Goldstein again. I'm so sorry, Councilman. I'm not like on your questions today. Have we thought about, because this is something I brought up before, especially again in South Norwalk, we do need our sidewalks maintained, especially if we end up having a school out here. But have we looked into just creating walk paths that remove pedestrians from traffic and actually gives them a more scenic and like more shortcut ways? Because quite honestly, like for example, when I'm walking around, I go through so many shortcuts, but there's so many of my shortcuts that have been blocked off. So like, back in the day, long time ago, next to exit, I want to say R15, right? Like that used to not be like grass. You used to be able to walk there. So you can cut through the maritime area from South Norwalk and get uptown much quicker, but we've lost that side road. You still can do the cut, but you lost that side road that goes behind like Matthews Park, where the graves are, towards the trains track area, right? Then there's like little places like, I would cut through, but now that property has put a gate up, so we've lost that way to go through. So it's kind of pushing pedestrians to the cars. Have we looked at in our planning to give walkers a different space, a different place away from bicycles and even clearer bicycle paths, but bicycles and cars? Like, have we thought about that in our planning at all? That maybe even be more connected to what we have in nature here, the tree canopies that we're trying to create in our, like, have we even thought of that? Like just giving walkability a different place somehow within our structures here in Norwalk. I don't know if that's doable, but it's definitely something that I do a lot, but I made them myself. And I start seeing that, accessibility to those shortcuts, those more covert ways of walking that actually remove you from traffic are leaving us, and just wondering if that's being thought of.
So I think part of what you're really looking at is the NRBT, right? And we are really committed to advancing more of the trail through and completing the trail, particularly through Norwalk and all other different parts. So I think where you're talking about, there's Crescent and around Matthews Park, and so we have really looked at how the trail and had to there was some efforts that took place a few months ago, really like kind of reimagining the portions of the trail around there. We participate in that. We participate in development when that occurs, and really looking at a strong pedestrian focus for every single development. We also are undertaking the Harbor Loop Trail. It's going to take us a little while to get for these off-road paths, but we're very much committed to making that happen. We believe that these are going to be the regional destinations that set us apart from other places. I think when we look down in Sono, when we were looking at a potential school or potential other development down there, there is an old rail line that goes from the train station right down, and we were having an internal conversation, reimagining like we have other trails. Like we need to have, we have to have an off-road trail for this community so that they get to also take advantage of those use trails that you could bike, or you could rollerblade, or you could go for a walk on. But very much so, I think we need to better our street network. I think we need to better, those other off-road opportunities. But first and foremost, I think our street network has to be there, and it has to be one that we look at safety and making sure people are comfortable. Because quite honestly, I want more people on the street walking, because it makes our streets safer, right? People just don't do bad stuff in front of other people, right? So if we have really sidewalks that are filled with people doing stuff, I think we're going to have this really great connected community.
Okay, I thank you for that answer as well. And I get the putting, you would want them on the street, I get it. But I'm also thinking about, well, most people wouldn't have that, right? Like, as if they're walking. But you can shorten the walk so much if we have offsite walking paths.
Yep.
Right. So that's also, part of a little small part of equity. Like if I can't afford a car, whatever, how can I get to one place to another in a shorter time, right? So just thinking about that, because again, I will park my car 24/7. Like if I didn't have to have one, I wouldn't. But that's just me. I grew up in Stanford. We're walkers, you know what I mean? So just wondering, like, if we really are. So just wondering, like, if that's being thought of, what you're saying it is, that would be great, especially because, there are times when I used to live uptown before this, and I started working on Day Street. My daughter went to Columbus, and that's what brought me down to District B. But I used to walk from work home every single day. So that's from 49 Day Street up to 16 School Street every single day, right? And the whole time I took back roads and shortcuts the whole way. But it was literally like my way of transitioning from work to being a mom. So those things, easily getting home on time to my child, having that mental break, and getting there in a time efficient manner, I think should be a part of thinking about walkability, not only the access to walkability, but being able to get from place to place in a timely manner walking.
Yep. So we are looking at how we could further advance the NRVT, but also then how could legs start to spawn off the NRVT to bring us to connect its parts to get you those little paths and get you from point A to point B, and offer options. I think it's all about creating options, right?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very much committed to advancing that. Yes,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So glad that Councilman Luce brought up the South Norwalk School, because one of the concerns that I think came up in the discussion around that school was the walkability and the streets around where that school could potentially go. And so I very much hope that you are part of all those conversations, because I think you have a really great way of thinking outside the box and thinking of solutions in areas that are much in need of solutions. And I think that could very much be one of those places. And we all very much want that school to be as successful as possible.
We will be involved in the process to entirety, and we'll be a vocal proponent of improving walkability and allowing people get to school safely by walking, right? And because look, I can't fix the traffic if y'all don't give me an opportunity to get people off the road, right? So
yeah, totally. And I appreciate that you're going to be a part of that process. That makes me feel a lot better as we move forward into that. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Jim, so much for coming. Thank you for coming as well. I'm sorry we didn't get to hear from you, but I do encourage everybody on the committee to, reach out to the team and set up to go in and meet with them about your district or citywide issues. It was really informative when I did. So thank you.
And yes, please give me a call and we can come to City Hall. We can meet for coffee. Happy to do anything. I'm sorry that you didn't get to hear from Mike today. We'll fix the mic issues for the next meeting, but understand that we have a lot of good people doing a lot of good work for you guys.
Absolutely.
If there's anything you can do, we're happy to come back at any point in time. And we will follow up with getting the flyers out to you to, if you can help
Yes,
disseminate,
please.
greatly appreciate it. And always use the customer service and encourage people to use customer service to log those tickets. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. We'll get the word out.
Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say before I call on Councilmember Revelous for a
I was just
motion?
gonna say motion to adjourn. That's all I was gonna say.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night.
Bye. Bye.